Hey, Naturalist Clay here with Lee County Conservation. I'm here at the Heron Bend Conservation Area. It got beautiful outside. I'm in my t-shirt. The sun is out, and I thought I'd show you guys around a little. We're only a very short distance here from the Mississippi River. You can see it on down there, and this is looking across our sand prairie on down across the wetlands to the river. This area has not been burned. If you look over at our other prairie, we burned this off last fall, and it is much more barren. We'll go over and take a look at that. So here is the unburned prairie, and if I turn over here, you can see our burned sand prairie. There's a lot of interesting things in the prairie, and it's neat once it's all been burned off because you can see everything that's been hidden by the tall grasses. And let's go look around and see what there is. We are right next to a wetland on the Mississippi, and as you can see, where there's a lot of water, the trees grow really well. Those are mostly silver maples over there. But down here in the prairie, the sand prairies are very, very dry. They're almost entirely sand. Very, very little other soil here. And as a result, it really only grows a few very dry prairie grasses and some flowers. And one really interesting thing is this prickly pear cactus. Very sharp. It's got some nice needles on it. These need a lot of light, and they need a lot of dry and not a lot of competition. So those are pretty cool to see. Prickly pear cactuses are really neat because it's not very common to see cactuses in Iowa, but these actually grow all the way up into Minnesota, and people are quite surprised to see prickly pear or see any kind of cactus growing in the Midwest. But they do quite well here. They can handle the hard winters, but they can also handle being burned. This one has been through a fire just last fall, but it's going to come back nicely, and it'll get some beautiful flowers here once it greens up. This is also prime habitat for turtles to lay their eggs, and there's quite a few egg nests out here, and we'll go looking for some eggshells. Here's some geese out there in the distance. Here they come overhead. Everything's moving up the Mississippi and migrating back with the warm weather. And pretty soon the turtles will be up, and they're going to get ready to lay some eggs. Here we have a nest from last year. You can see the depression a little bit in there. So this was probably a red-eared slider. Came up, laid its eggs. Here's some eggshells here. So these are either eggs that hatched and the turtles returned to the water, or this might have been a nest that a raccoon got into. Raccoons have very good sense of smell, and they find the nest and help themselves to the eggs because we know eggs are delicious. There's also a few weeds growing out here in this prairie, things that don't mind the dry soil. This is called mullein, and it has soft leaves that are almost like velvet, and they help hold the moisture in for this plant when it's really dry. But they also make super good toilet paper if you find yourself caught out in the woods in an emergency, which might happen to you if you go out hiking. So these are kind of neat, but they are a naughty weed, so we don't like to see them everywhere. Once all the plants have been burned off, it also gives us a chance to see the animals that may not have made it through the winter for a variety of reasons. This one looks like it's been here for a while, probably from last year. That's pretty cool. I also saw a cool bone over here of a deer. Some kind of deer vertebrae. We also have what looks to be maybe a robin or another bird that has lost part of itself. Lots of things happen here when we're not looking. Here's another cool skull. I wonder who that belonged to. Let's see. Some nice chewing incisors. Definitely in the rodent family. Perhaps a muskrat that has found himself somebody's meal. Another prickly pear cactus. This guy got toasted pretty good. Don't worry, he'll come back just fine next year. There's quite a few of these out here. This one seems to be coming back. Got a little bit of green in there. There's even a wasp nest out here without a tree anywhere around. Who knows how that got here? There's even some bits of stuff like old ceramics and glass jars out here in this field from back when this was a farm. In the old days, there wasn't anywhere to put your trash, so you just buried it out in the field. This piece is kind of cool. You can find all kinds of cool things out here. People have even found arrowheads out in this field. Some really old ones from 10,000 years ago even. Here's a piece of ceramic pottery. This was probably a nice piece in somebody's kitchen back in the day. Probably 100 years ago. And of course, when I wasn't looking, sometime after it rained, some deer came through here. They went off that way. Back this way. They're out there finding food by the water somewhere. Down here where it's moister by the water, we have quite a bit of moss. Green it up really nicely. It's just like nature's carpet. I see the gophers have been out. The prairie right by the woods and right by the water is a great place for bluebirds. So they have the grassland, they have a little bit of trees. So this is a bluebird box that was put in by a Boy Scout. They ought to be nesting pretty soon. We even have a nice mole tunnel here. Goes quite a ways. Somewhere up in this maple, there seems to be a woodpecker. As we get closer to the river, the land gets wetter and wetter. We have a great wetland here. There's always a lot of frogs and ducks in here. You can see some wood duck boxes out there. Wood ducks are the only perching ducks, and they love hollow cavities, hollow trees, and wooden boxes we make for them. If you listen carefully, you can hear the chorus frogs. They're out already. Seems to be a muskrat swimming around out there. Saw him the other day. He's disappeared though. He's not going to show himself. Show yourself too much, you get eaten by an eagle. That's the life of a muskrat. If you listen really carefully, there's those frogs. So I'll see you guys later. Come on out and check our parks out. They are open for business.